Hey guys, it's Matt. This chapter 42 is dedicated to all us poor devils, people like me with absolutely nothing to do. Memorial Day weekend. No picnics invited to, no beach homes invited to. That's fine by me. Absolutely fine by me. I'm so tired of. I used to run around and do that list. My friend of mine calls it FOMO, fear of missing out. So the list is of what needs to be done, kayaking, and then this and then that, and run down to New Jersey for the day. And no, thank you, no thanks. Absolutely fine here, living in my own skin. But it could be quiet, so I wanted to get a chapter out. We'll have a lot of fun with this one. It's called "The Ritual Killing of Princess Di," D-I-E. And I shouldn't really say have a lot of fun with that type of title, but look, we poke fun at reality and its presentation to us. I just want to say one thing before I get into this section. I've noticed that the reality presentation or slash the conspiracy, it's almost not like a double agent, it's like a triple agent. There seems to always be three ways of interpreting something, and this Lady Di, D-I-E story, it goes along with JFK and all the rest, where there's three interpretations. First, you have the interpretation. This seems to be a recurring theme, so let's just keep this in mind as we move through the analysis of the fraud and the analysis of past fraud. We have what the official story tells us, what the news tells us. Well, we know that's wrong, always wrong. But after that, it's not. There's always two levels of conspiracy after that. So these events are like triple agents. So for the example, what we're going to look at, Lady Di or Princess Di. Okay, the knee-jerk reaction from the conspiracy world is she was killed and murdered, and that absolutely does seem like what happened. But there's always that it's a hoax. I mean, we've seen so many hoaxes from this reality that we can never completely take that off the table. So it's a triple option, these events in many cases, and I'm just starting to notice that. Um, I'm not, again, for lack of better, we know with Lady Di. I'll get into it in just a moment. But with Lady Di, we know the official story is and that's what I'm going to show you here is how ridiculous it is. That's when I say poking fun or having fun, that the people around us can actually believe in the lunacy and absurdity of the official story. We're going to have fun with that as a joke, an absolute joke. But is it? Of course, are they the type of creatures that would perform a ritualistic sacrificial death at the ancient Merovingian site in the Tunnel of Souls? Yeah, they're certainly capable of that. But I've just witnessed reality for too long and never take hoax off the table. Just for like with Prince's death, some of these deaths are real, some are hoaxes. We just don't know, and we're not, as a community, we're not sophisticated enough yet to know exactly. We keep both on the table. If you know for sure, we don't know these creatures intimately enough, nor do we want to, but we observe from a distance, and we can favor one or the other, but ultimately we'll never know. Right now, I favor that Diana was ritualistically sacrificed, but I'm just saying the hoax is on the table, and it's amazing how most of these events play out in a similar way. I call it the triple agent option. Most of the people around us are operating at that first level, what Anderson Cooper presents, and that is truly, it's so idiotic, the official stories. We wonder how anybody can believe it. Okay, returning to the book, chapter 42, The Ritual Killing of Princess Di, D-I-E. This part right here, the story about the death of Princess Diana, will separate the wheat from the tares in terms of who is willing to accept the real world and who will choose to return to the constructed illusion of a television reality, with the first reality TV show actually called The Real World, and the second one called Big Brother. What a coincidence! Actually, C-SPAN predates MTV's Real World, so congressional hearings are actually the first reality TV show, and that's consistent with most reality TV shows because they're fake. Anderson Cooper's first stint on TV was hosting a reality TV show called The Mole. You can't make this shit up. Now, Diana's death is overflowing with symbolism. It's so blatant, in fact, it's almost funny. It's mind-blowing how many people will choose to write off impossible circumstance as coincidence. It was rumored that Princess Diana said something very strange about her new family, the Windsors, soon after she was married to Charles. She said, "They're not human." It helps in substantiating such a wild accusation from Diana if your husband admits to being a direct descendant of Count Dracula and enjoys visiting Transylvania. That's not a conspiracy. Oh, he loves talking about it. Loves it. Lots of stuff online. Charles just telling you how he just loves to go back to his roots in Transylvania. No joke. It certainly adds to your unusual pronouncement, Diana's pronouncement that they're not human, when your father-in-law, Prince Philip, Queen Elizabeth's husband, said that if reincarnation exists, he would like to return as a deadly virus to reduce the human population. Also true. Then there's a queen that never dies. All anyone has ever known on this earth is a UK queen being Queen Elizabeth. I mean, literally, it's almost that simple. Almost everyone on this earth, all they have ever known is Queen Elizabeth on the throne. I mean, if that's not a reality breakdown, I don't know what is. It just seems like Charles, Prince Charles, or whatever he does or hangs out or whatever he is anymore, it just seems to me like he'll never become king. It just, of course, that doesn't make any sense what I just said, because, well, Elizabeth's very old, and the second she passes, well, Prince Charles will be king. Well, Camilla she won't be queen or whatever. She'll give him some bogus title. But of course that has to happen. I don't know. There's just something. It just seems to me, and I'm not predicting this. I would never predict it because it seems so obvious he will be king. It just seems like we're in some weird reality loop, and he'll never be. Things never change, and we just loop through the same period of time, and Charles will never be king. I don't know. Just wanted to throw that in there. That's not even in the book. Setting the scene. Diana left the back entrance of the Paris Ritz-Carlton Hotel the night of August 31st, 1997. August 31st, 1997. A new Mercedes limo was pulled around back to pick her and Dodi Fayed up. In this case, new regarding new Mercedes means it was not the car that they arrived the Ritz-Carlton in that night. Of course, you know the rest of the fake story. The reporters of the paparazzi crime family were stalking her, and the limo sped away through the streets of Paris at high speed to escape the tabloids. Just before entering the Pont de l'Alma, my French is horrible, sorry, Pontdel''Alma, Pont de l'Alma, I'll just call it the Llama Tunnel. So, just before entering the Llama Tunnel, the stalking turned into a high-speed chase, and Diana's limo struck the 13th pillar, and the beloved princess and her soon-to-be husband, Dodi Fayed, were killed. Now, why Diana was dating that toad is the biggest mystery of all in this section. I guess if your ex-husband is not human, anything, by comparison, even Dodi, looked good. Sure, the story of what happened to Diana makes perfect sense to the masses. It was just a famous person out to avoid reporters. Happens all the time. Nothing to see here. Now go back up into the South Tower and get back to work. Let the conspiracy begin. Before we start, do you agree that if all the major elements of a story make absolutely no sense to anyone, above maybe Forrest Gump's IQ, then the conspiracy argument should hold as much weight as the official story? I'd like to ask any of the plastic anchormen who present the news at night to explain away all of the following I'm about to present as coincidence. Oh, they would do it. After the accident, why did it take 90 minutes to get Diana to the hospital when there was a hospital just a few miles away? No, they didn't need to wait an hour or more for the jaws of life to arrive to remove twisted metal. Nope, not the case. Waited 90 minutes. Yeah. There were 17 traffic cameras between the Ritz Hotel and the underground tunnel where she was killed. 17 traffic cameras between one spot and the other. Now, at this point in the book and in studying reality, You should be expecting an impossible coincidence in the official story, as this is par for the course in our reality script. So here you go. Most of the traffic cameras were switched off that night. They were switched off that night. Yeah. For the few cameras that remained on, they produced no images. Well, sure, what a coincidence. Perhaps the city of Paris has the same surveillance camera vendor that the Pentagon had on 2001. Why did the limo driver not follow the direct and quickest route to Dodi Fayed's apartment? Why was Diana immediately embalmed so there was no proper post-mortem examination? Well, it was just a car accident. What else could possibly have happened to the first member of the royal family about to marry a Muslim? Queen Elizabeth was likely very excited by that thought and the thought of attending another wedding. Bloodlines are everything to the royals. Prince Harry was allowed to marry a mudblood because he has almost no route to the throne. That's right, Harry has almost no route to the throne. He's a tertiary of a tertiary at this point. William's son. Prince Charles, I guess it's the Queen's great-grandson? Yeah, great-grandson. William's son would be the next king if something happened to William, not Harry. Harry was likely forced to marry a mudblood because the royals wanted to send a fake message to the world that they're no longer concerned with bloodline issues. Yeah, sure. Trust me, if William, heir to their Game of Thrones, would have brought home Halle Berry, the Queen would have likely had her thrown off the balcony. Regarding Diana's death, no one ever considers this. What was so special about that particular evening where a group of reporters would race after Diana at speeds up to 70 miles an hour to get some pictures? Remember who Diana was, or was not, at that point in her life. Diana was old news. She was no longer a royal. There wasn't much going on that night. Okay, they were just out at the Ritz. It wasn't like the night she announced her relationship to Prince Charles and she could become the next Queen of England. Of course, all the world's reporters would have raced after her on that night. When Diana died, it was just some random night many years after Diana had left the grand stage. Now, considering who she once was, Diana was a relative nobody on the date of her death. Obviously, that's the wrong choice of words for somebody like Diana, but you get the point. Would 10 reporters race after Michael Jordan this evening after spotting him coming out of a Longhorn Steakhouse in Jacksonville, Florida? No, Michael Jordan today is yesterday's story. And so is Diana on that night. Think of the Pamela Anderson, say, of Baywatch versus the fat one who visited WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange held up in the Ecuadorian embassy. Nobody cares about the latter, Pamela Anderson. Think of Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia in Return to the Jedi as Jabba's sex slave. Think of how popular she was the week that movie came out versus Carrie Fisher in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Now, I'm well aware reporters would always be interested in following the ex-princess. Okay, they're always going to be interested in Diana, no matter what, and taking whatever pictures they could for whatever magazines would pay whatever. Okay, sure. And, even Dodi Fayed, get some pictures of him. But what was so important where they had to race after her, risking everyone's life in a high-speed chase, years after Diana had already become old news. Once again, it's so easy to see the whole story is cooked up. If reporters were being so aggressive that night, why didn't the limo driver just simply slow down and call the police or ask for a police escort? Or drive to a local police station and ask for some assistance? Why do you have to floor it to get away? Why were the racing paparazzi snapping pictures anyway? What were they snapping pictures of? The outside of a car? Those types of limos have black tinted glass. No one can see inside. If it was late at night and Diana and Dodi were going home to the place where everybody knew they lived, why didn't the reporters have other paparazzi waiting at the destination? Why race after them? Where did they think they were going at that time of night after dinner at the Ritz, Paris Ritz Hotel, Ritz-Carlton? The Dodi residence address was not a secret. Well, wait there. If Dodi, if Diode, I mean, you combine them, it's Diode. If Dodi and Diana had reporters harassing them every night, you don't think a billionaire would have had a garage to drive into, like the Batcave, so there's nothing for reporters to see when they get out of the car when they arrive at their destination? So what were all these reporters racing after in the first place? There's nothing to take, no pictures to take. It's dark. The limo has dark tinted glass. There's nothing to see in it. And when the limo arrives at its destination, it's going to go into a garage where you can't see anything. Really? It's all made up. Why people can't see this is always our biggest mystery. Your biggest mystery, my biggest mystery. How the dopes around us can't see the basics of this shit. Okay, let's assume I'm wrong. Let's go through all permutations. I'm wrong. And on the night of her death, Diana was just as popular. Lost no popularity. And Diana had been in the spotlight at the highest levels for almost 20 years then, or plus. So then, if it was common for reporters to race after her at breakneck speeds every single time they came upon her, don't you think that that issue would have been addressed by Diana's security team decades ago? Do you think Diana's driver was peeling out and doing Vin Diesel impersonations from the Fast and the Furious every single time they went out to an IHOP? Doesn't Diana and Dodi Fayed roaming around Paris shopping for blue jeans like ever get a bit routine to where they don't have to race around and run after her anymore? Do you think mobs of reporters are waiting for Jane Fonda tonight, for example, to come out of her home? Switching gears, let's look at the Mercedes limo that was used at the end of the night and the one that was involved in what they're calling a high-speed chase. Most people don't know that that limo had previously been stolen from the limo rental company, was recovered, refurbished, and put back into use for the very first time that evening. No, that's not suspicious at all, is it? Nobody ever questions why the billionaire Fayed family didn't own their own car. Oh, they couldn't afford it, perhaps? You and I have our own car. The princess and the billionaire's son don't own a car. They had to get this Mercedes limo that was just refurbished from the fact that it was stolen. Really? How's that? Perhaps if they would have considered combining their money between Diana and Dodi, they could have raised a minimum down payment on a car to get their own. Don't they have zero down or like sign and drive deals in the EU? Perhaps Dodi emphasized saving money by not owning a car versus the remote chance that somebody at the rental car company could pack the car with explosives. Also, after the crash in the tunnel, the best evidence that exists, the best evidence out there is that Mercedes technicians did not inspect the car after the accident. The blame was immediately put on Diana's and Dodi Fayed's personal driver, Henry Paul. Henry Paul was accused of drunk driving, and his blood alcohol level was reported to be a shocking 0.17 by the news media. As a reference, US DWI is 0.08. It was 0.10 for many years. About 10 years ago, 12 years ago, most states finished switching to 0.08, and most of Europe is about 0.05 BAL or less. You can't even have one Sam Adams on an empty stomach and drive in Europe. However, no witnesses observed Henry Paul being drunk that evening at the Ritz. Not one. Of course he wasn't drunk. We don't need witnesses to know he wasn't drunk. There's no way he was drunk. Think about the ridiculous aspect of this part of the official story. Let's say that you were Henry Paul, the personal driver for the billionaire Dodi Fayed, his father, and Princess Diana. You've been working for the family for over 10 years. As a long-term confidant, you were probably earning about $250,000 to $300,000 a year for doing next to nothing, for just kind of waiting for the rich and famous to finish dinner. Henry Paul had $2,500 cash on him when he died. He was killed in the wreck as well, of course. Just going with the official story. Even Jay-Z would say that Henry Paul was living large. So what's the one thing in the world if you were in that role and you had the greatest job in the world, what's the one thing you couldn't do if you wanted to keep the job of a lifetime, of anybody's lifetime? Just kind of make 300 grand sitting around waiting for Diana to come out. That's not bad. I'll take it. How do I interview for that? The one thing you could never do is you could never drink before driving Dodi and Diana home. He could likely get away with almost anything else, working for the family for over 10 years with those long-term relationships. He could get away with almost anything else at least a few times and keep his job. He could sleep in a few times, he could be late a few times, have a fender bender here and there, tell a joke in poor taste, have a woman meet him inside the limo while Diana was having dinner. I'm sure he could get away with all that. Again, this isn't some new employee. You have somebody on the team for over 10 years for a reason. They're now a trusted confidant. I mean, remember, this guy Paul was a long-term associate of the Fayed family, not some taxi driver on the clock. So we're led to believe that he was hanging out at the Ritz bar waiting for Dodie and Diana, getting drunk. And drunk, not just drinking, not just having a few, drunk. 0.17 is more than double the legal limit and triple the French limit. It's not easy for a man more than 160 pounds to reach 0.17 blood alcohol level. For almost all men, it would take over a 6-pack of beer in under 2 hours. And for a larger man, for a big guy, it's about 8 beers in 2 hours. This is an exaggeration. It's almost hard work for anyone not pledging a college fraternity to eclipse 0.15 BAL. Alcoholics have a hard time doing it. So the official story is that the personal driver of Diana and Dodie was getting literally shit-faced at the Ritz bar while waiting for Dodie and Diana's creme brulee to come out of the oven. Do you buy that? Perhaps to avoid the $18 glasses of wine at the Ritz, so he was slugging pounders of Milwaukee's best in the limo by himself. No, look, now I know I said, at 0.05, for example, the French limit, you have one of these big alcoholed up IPAs and you can kind of even surpass the limit if you're a smaller guy and you haven't eaten nothing in the stomach. But the reason it's so hard to get to 0.17, I mean, you have to be almost doing shots because the body starts to process the alcohol. To get it sees it as a poison. So it processes it out. It's hard work to get to 0.17. I mean, we're talking, that's what kids do at fraternity parties. Like, Frank the Tank in the movie Old School with the beer funnels. And this is what this guy was doing. 0.17. I mean, why do they put these ridiculous elements into the official story? It's much more believable that if they would have said it was something like 0.11 or 0.12, and that would have been extremely impaired. All of Europe would have gone, oh, France, 0.05. He must have really been, drunk. And it would have made sense to people why he could have wrecked in a high-speed chase. But they make it 0.17. They always have to throw in the ridiculous elements to people like, the only people that'll catch them are people like you and I. Because we know he'd have to almost line up shots at the bar. Give me a break. Let's move on. Now, of course, most conspiracy theorists, smart enough to look past the official story, people hanging out at channels like this, and then they think, of course, she was murdered. And as I said, I believe, for lack of knowing, I believe she was murdered. There are other possibilities. But it's way beyond just, let's just examine, okay, was she murdered, but let's look at all the reasons and the symbolism. It's way beyond the fact that she was just simply murdered. I mean, they do things on multiple levels. They play multidimensional chess. Because just a murder, that's not crazy enough for this world that we observe. If you find the answer is just around one corner, it's not the answer. It takes at least 2 corners, and sometimes 5 corners, on a square to see what's really going on in this effed up world. The people who actually examine events for themselves and refuse to mindlessly parrot back what the news passes off as real would say that not only was she murdered, she was ritualistically killed in a cult fashion, and one that has ties to ancient pagan ritual. Of course, those who look to CNN for reality laugh at such an insane notion. But if you're objective in your analysis and see where this mountain of evidence leads, this stuff almost becomes obvious. Because, what's your threshold to explain away a string of endless coincidences? You can choose to believe the long-term driver was risking his $250,000 a year job pounding down Heinekens at the Ritz bar, or you can open your mind a bit to see what's almost obvious. Was the entire thing fake? Well, that's a repeated script in this reality, no doubt. But again, like I said, I don't think so in this case. We have to keep it on the table. We just don't know. But we're going to talk mostly about the ritualistic killing for the rest of this chapter. In general, there's just too much planned occult symbolism surrounding the event, in my opinion, for them not to breathe life into the ritual, in my opinion, with a real death. In other words, why are they putting forth such tremendous and what I would think is very meaningful occult symbolism to them without the real death to solidify it? That's my interpretation. Now, the creatures of this world operate in strange ways. It's possible her death was even planned from her birth. I'm just wildly speculating. I don't run in these circles, but I'm telling you, if almost anything bizarre should be put on the table, because that's how these creatures work. It's possible her death was planned per the stars from her very birth, as sick as that is. For example, the Twin Towers were built with the creatures knowing the exact day they would come down from the moment they started being built. No doubt about that. Well, I have to say it's my opinion, but come on now. I mean, when you're 99% sure of something, we probably can lose the word my opinion, but that goes without saying. All of this is my opinion. All right. Diana's car hit the 13th pillar in the tunnel. The number 13, of course, has a cult lineage that can be traced back centuries. There's a reason why we've been taught to be wary of Friday the 13th. Whether the origin for it can be traced back to the Pope's supposed slaughter of the Knights Templar on Friday the 13th, or there are other explanations, it doesn't matter. We know 13th is a major occult number in their circles, for whatever the reason is. Perhaps it's the sun and the 12-star constellations of the zodiac that created the 13th. There's also the sun and his 12 disciples, totaling 13. There are 5 distinct references on the back of the dollar bill that represent the number 13. And of course, that's not because there were original 13 colonies, Matt. No, that's the dumbed-down version. That's the explanation floated out to the profane and the uninitiated so they get a satisfactory answer and shut up and stop asking questions. It's an answer for those who believe the secret societies that still exist today are no different than Al Bundy's men's club called No Ma'am. 13 is an occult number with massive significance, like I said. It's far more likely, of course, that 13 was the original number of colonies in this country because of what that number represents, not the other way around. What a coincidence, then, that Diana's Mercedes struck the 13th pillar in the tunnel. If you think that's a coincidence, you simply have no idea how the world really works. Those who have schemed their tricks and put themselves into power in this realm, they do everything by the numbers, by the stars, and by the alchemical symbols. I'm not sure. They might look to the stars before figuring out the best time to sit down on the pot, on the golden toilet seat. Everything is by the stars, the gematria numbers, the gematria, and the symbols of alchemy. It turns out that, of course, Diana is the Roman goddess for the hunt and is also the moon goddess. All the coincidences now start coming together. All ancient cultures that we know about participated in human sacrifice. Why would we believe that after 10,000 years of this practice, or 100,000 years of this practice, or who knows how long, because our history has been completely hidden from us? It could be millions of years of history here, or there could be a few hundred. We don't know. Either way, it's been hidden from you and I, the profane. It's been hidden from us. But after all of these the records that say they practice human sacrifice, well, why would they not be believed? Sacrifice to Moloch and whoever. It likely is still around, in other words. It likely this sacrifice just went underground. We have laws now. They just can't do it in the open. But why would we think it went away? Many people reading this or listening to this right now are outraged at me. Or anybody new you would hand this book to. We became civilized, of course. And there's no groups that do human sacrifice now. And this is the modern age, not the time of barbarians and Vikings. Really? Let me look out my window. Has rape stopped? Has murder stopped? Has pedophilia stopped? Wars have killed more people in the 20th century than in any other time in history. Governments killed more of their own people than those taken out by wars, by a factor of like 150 million. But people think that the ancient civilizations as backward for participating in blood sacrifice rituals. Modern leaders have essentially or exponentially spilled more blood than the ancients again by an exponential factor. According to the University of Hawaii, Mao and our other good leaders of the 20th century killed almost 250 million people. 250 million people killed by their own governments in the 20th century. Guess what? That's blood sacrifice ritual. And it's out in the open. Some readers of this book have the gall to believe that we are civilized, that right now we are civilized, and the ancient cultures were primitive. I mean, everything is backwards. We believe we're civilized. You know how sick that is? If being civilized means which society killed the most people, yeah, then we win. We win. Go look at a term called democide, and add the plus sign to your Google search to the University of Hawaii. Democide and the University of Hawaii. They added up all the millions dead. As mentioned, Diana is a moon goddess. Princess Diana died by hitting the 13th pillar. There are 13 moon cycles in the year. Diana was killed on what is called the Black Moon. Why did J.K. Rowling sell the new Harry Potter books between midnight and 1 a.m.? It's because it goes along with the theme of her books, which that time of the night is commonly referred to as the witching hour. This actually relates to why it took, in my opinion, and other smart people who have examined the Diana incident, why it took an hour and a half to get Diana to a hospital when there was one about a mile away. Of course, they're in Paris. A Beijing rickshaw with the puller of the rickshaw having a sprained ankle could have got Diana to a hospital in under 10 minutes, but they couldn't get her to a hospital for an hour and a half. It wasn't rush hour. There was no road detour or heavy traffic. There was no account of Diana being trapped in twisted metal waiting for the jaws of life. She wasn't immediately rushed to the hospital because Diana wasn't dead yet from the crash. That's what the smartest people are saying. And they're also saying this: it's likely that the ritual called for her to be sacrificed at that spot between midnight and 1 a.m. At that exact spot. Now, this is far beyond a simple murder. It was an occult ritual, and there's tremendous evidence and further evidence to support this. Amazingly, the Pont de l'Alma, Pont D-E-L-A-L-M-A, which I'll call the Lama Tunnel, it means Bridge of Souls. Really? You may have noticed in many cities in Washington, D.C. that some tunnels run under the streets in many cities to bypass traffic. Take a tunnel to go down low and there's no lights and you can move through the city more quickly. The Lama Tunnel does not run under a lake or river, but the tunnel runs under Paris surface streets. Guess what's on the street directly above the spot where Diana was, what we'll call now, ritually sacrificed? The sculpture of the Flame of Liberty, an exact replica of the flame that sits on top of the torch in the hand of the Statue of Liberty. Again, let's pause. The Statue of Liberty in the United States, or we'll call Isis or Helios, holds up the torch. A replica of the top of the torch, the flame, is on the surface streets directly above the spot where Diana was ritually sacrificed. Oh man, that's just you conspiracy theorists. That's just a coincidence. Yeah. Amazingly, the Parisian flame sits atop a black 5-pointed pentagram. You can believe that. The occult symbolism tied to the pentagram is presented in hundreds of books and movies. No reason to go into it here, and mostly related to witchcraft and sometimes to Satanism. Of course, you and I are no longer surprised by the way they operate in this reality. The only thing that surprises us is why our friends and family can't see it, as mentioned. Where do you think this giant flame of liberty sits on the Paris streets from, say, a map's view or a bird's eye view? It sits right at the top of 3 streets that form a pyramid. Do you recall the eye on the back of the dollar bill in the pyramid? One need only look at the street grid of Washington, D.C. to see that all of this symbolism is planned on purpose and planned way, way in advance. Finally, the memorial for Diana and Dodi displayed at Harrods. By the way, the Fayed family owned they're the most famous, what do you call it, department store in the world, Harrods. But the little memorial they put in for the two of them in there is, of course, a jet black pyramid. Okay, you simply can't make this shit up. Diana's burial site at Althorpe House in Northampton, UK, is a grave marker on a small island of trees. Okay, an island of trees. Guess there's like a moat of some kind surrounds this Althorpe House, and it's not in the river, but kind of in the moat, this small island. 4 black swans swim around the island. Now, the island on the estate looks out of place because the small island is a dense woodland scene, just packed with trees. Just think of this island with just trees coming out all over. It's just out of place. It looks unnatural for so many trees to be growing on such a small island, until one considers the goddess Diana was also the goddess of the forest and the hunt, in addition to the moon. It's a deluge of pagan symbolism carried forth to the very end. Even her name. This is the story of Lady Di. D-I-E. Guys, just to drive home the most important points of the last video I made, I believe it was chapter 34, really trying to understand how this reality script works. Again, important to reiterate, the most important thing here is not to spend the rest of our life trying to determine how it was done, why it was done, what they got out of it, how it traces the exact pagan symbolism, all comes together. Let's say you do solve it, which we never will. So what? What are you going to get for solving it? The point in all of this is to remove ourselves, to go back to that bird's eye view at 20,000 feet and look down at all this madness that runs in this reality and say, a script is running here. A script of some kind is running in this reality. It presents never-ending conspiracy. This Diana thing is just one of thousands of things that we chase. A script of some kind is running here. The script wants us to participate in a certain way. It wants you to read your lines. It wants you to read your cue cards. So ultimately, we need to learn to remove ourselves from the script and do for ourselves to pass the life test. This endless presentation of conspiracy and fraud is just overwhelming evidence in my attempt for many people that are new to these topics to say, all right, you got me now. Something's going on here, and I see it. So I just want people to say, I finally see it. The people listening to this now already see it. So, but we still need to remind ourselves that, let's just say I got some of this wrong about whatever the triple god Diana, and I didn't relate that the right way to pagan symbolism, and I didn't tie in the Merovingians the right way. So the point is, so what? So what? The only point in any of this is not to get it right, but to say a reality script is running in this realm. And if I participate in the reality script or I read my lines, I'm going to get screwed over. Its goal is to tie me to this realm, and my goal is to tie back my tethers to my spiritual self.